Okay, good evening, everybody. How is everyone doing? Hope you're all good. Hope you're all well. I mean, I think last couple of weeks I've been relatively positive about crypto, and I hope today will be. Well, there'll be some elements of positivity within it. But I do want to spend a bit of time talking about altcoins. I think, some of the feedback that I've got in Discord, maybe I am running out of love of altcoins at the moment, and they have been struggling, and it's not to be shied away from. It's not to stick our heads in the sand. We talk about it so that maybe we can take advantage of it. And I want to just discuss altcoins, and the title Altcoins Doomsday. Well, to be honest with you, it might as well have just been all risk assets doomsday tomorrow, because the reality is we don't really know what's going to happen yet. We do know that Donald Trump is going to address the world, and he is going to talk about tariffs. But beyond that, and until the words actually fall out of his mouth, I don't know what he's going to say, and I don't know what the reaction of that is going to be. But we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about what possible reactions could come from that, and then how that could work into the market. As always, if you've got any questions, stick them in the chat. I've got a couple of questions that I'll run through as well, but we'll do a tiny bit of news, not too much to talk about. We'll talk about the altcoins and Bitcoin, and then we'll go into some TA to wrap that one up. Let us dive in. So we've seen these charts before, but this is where we currently find ourselves. 3-day time frame, Bitcoin on the top at the moment, and these lines, they've been here for the last few weeks, so there's nothing particularly new necessarily about that. What we can say is, I think, what's happened over the last 2 weeks, finding that kind of area in around about 80 to 81,000 has looked relatively good. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves to say that, the 76 was the bottom or anything like that. But really depending on how let's forget about tariffs, how price action moves from where we currently are. There is a little bit of a level around about 85.5, but if you're just looking on the 3-day time frame, 87,500 is something we need to breach and hold for so many reasons. One, it's going to give us a higher high. Two, it's going to take us above that resistance level. And three, well, it's going to make it look like we possibly actually formed a double bottom there with, a slightly higher left-hand edge. So plenty for us to work towards. And if you don't think that can happen, just look at what happened with the market today. We will go into it a little bit later. We were 82,000 at one stage, and I honestly thought that Donald Trump had cancelled the tariffs, because we moved from 82,000 to 85,000 in what felt like a time it took me to boil the kettle. So yeah, we can see those moves happen, but it's actually about, once we get to those levels, can we sustain above it? Now, Bitcoin dominance is also, we're getting closer and closer. That 64% level that I've been talking about, we're getting closer towards it. There was some talk maybe of, this rising compression breaking out to the downside, but it doesn't really look like that anymore, unfortunately. If we are to draw it, granted, 3-day time frame, not the most accurate, but maybe try and connect. Maybe I'll just drop it onto the daily just to try and draw this one a little bit better. I'll move it so you can actually see as well. But we've kind of got that there, and then we would have had this one connecting to this one, connecting to this one. So maybe it's just at the top, or it's just peeking its head above the top of the level at the moment. I did say last week, although rising compression I expected to drop to the bottom, my actual belief was we're still going to head towards that 64% level at a minimum. And I still feel that's the case. And actually, this is one of the biggest arguments I have at the moment with altcoins, which I'll go into a little bit later on. Total market cap, excluding Bitcoin and Ethereum, again, not looking particularly great. Similar, I admit, to where Bitcoin is. However, what I would say is that the price action, not just from the lows, but where we find ourselves at the moment, is not as strong and as convincing as where Bitcoin's currently is. It's a lot wickier. We've got a lot further distance to get to in terms of getting away from the next, or getting through the next resistance level here, which again, 3-day time frame, but that's the kind of area that I'm looking at for it. And so I'm not counting my chickens on that one. And for me, the big level is, I mean, it's 940. Let's just call it 950 for a nice round number in terms of $950 billion. Get us back into where obviously that double top neckline broke down. And that one has kind of actually played out now. If you were to just draw that line there and reciprocate it down, it's a little bit further to go, but it actually, I'd say we've pretty much invalidated it. Well, not invalidated, we've completed that move down now. Granted, there was probably another 20 billion to go, but it was a nice move ultimately in the end. Big drop back down, bought back up rapidly, Kobo'd off it, and then we've fallen away. A couple of retests there, but that's where we sit with that one. And then Tau. I mean, we'll definitely go into more detail. There used to be 3 lines on Tau. They were all sort of cloned and repeated, so they were the same angle, but this is the one that we're really focusing on right now. And that price action over the last 2 weeks, yeah, okay, we've dropped. We've been down pretty low. 220 has been a sort of a regular feature over the last month, but we have made these climbs back up. But each time, unfortunately, that trend line from 260 to 270, maybe even 280, we've just not been able to break through it. There are fib levels, there are EMAs that are showing why it's a fairly strong level there, and we have come back down. Now, what we can say at the moment is we have still held that 220. And if we continue to hold that daily, on the 3-day, then fine. We start to lose it and close below it, we are going to have to ask some questions. And this could just be the second side of a W, double bottom, whatever you want to call it. So, there's still plenty to consider. We shouldn't be just thrown in the towel just yet on that. We'll have a look at this in a little bit more detail later on. Adams, but the question on my mind, will Ethereum's terrible performance drag alts and ruin the run, or will they break free? ETH broke below its 300-week SMA today for the first time since 2021. I am going to talk about ETH and how that is impacting the altcoin market a little bit later on, but similar kind of thought process there. Hard to say what is priced in, because things change almost daily as Trump announces changes his mind. That is so true. And that actually, for me, if we go ahead with the tariffs and they're 25% and the world reciprocates as well, and it's just a massive tariff war, although that will be a bitter pill to swallow, the markets will know what to do. What's causing uncertainty at the moment, what's causing people to flee from the market, is the uncertainty. Not really knowing where to go. They'd rather go to safe havens like gold. And the market hates uncertainty. It can deal with bad news. It can deal with the world shutting down like it did in March 2020. The real reason that had a snap drop is because no one knew really how to handle it. Once we understood the world was locking down and we had to just get on with it, then, the markets were able to recover. So you're right. The way Donald Trump is actually approaching this at the moment, and I don't think he's necessarily changed his mind in any of these over the last couple of weeks, but certainly a couple of weeks ago, it was just a constant flip-flop of opinions. I think he's been fairly resolute, maybe that's the wrong word to use, in terms of tomorrow being the day he was going to announce what is happening. But again, we don't really know what he's going to say. And that does kind of take us into, when I saw, Adam's input, when I say today, I mean end of month close. Okay, let's have a look at that. So yeah, Trump here, and we are going to be looking at the trade wars. And that's what's dominated a lot of the markets. We've seen the stock market, the sentiment in the stock market is the worst it's been since the great financial crash in terms of days in extreme fear. Almost 20 years we've been down here. As we've just discussed, we're closer to understanding what exactly is going to be announced. What we do know is that Donald Trump's going to address the nation, address the world, 3 p.m. I believe that's UK time. I might just have to double check that one, and sort of just announce how he's going to be dealing with these. And he has let out a little bit of snippets where, first of all, it was just going to be a global tariff. Then he was going to take it, slightly easy on nations that would, honor some favors back or whatever. But we don't really have those figures. There have been talks of 20 to 25% on manufacturing, on cars, on just, wine or beer or alcohol, whatever. So, some pretty hard hitting industries. And if we do go ahead of this, we've got to face up to the reality of, let's take a car, for example. Someone wants to go out and buy, a BMW, for example, in America, I don't know how popular they are in America, but let's just say they're $100,000, you know, as of tomorrow, they're not going to be $100,000, they're going to be $125,000. And so that person, whoever was going to buy it, he might have been happy to pay that $100,000. You know, he's got to really want to buy that car for $125,000 now, you know, for a 24-hour increase. And so we are going to see a massive impact. As painful as that may be, he believes it's the right course of action to steady the ship, to correct what he believes is a 40-year injustice of just the world just taking advantage of tariffs on the United States and the United States not reciprocating those. So we shall have to wait and see. As I say, the crypto markets, it has been talked about, the tariffs, for the best part of 6 weeks now, and you would have thought that the markets would have priced that in. But the reality is we are still falling. Fear and greed is still in fearful levels. I know that CoinMarketCap and Alternative Me have a pretty wide spectrum of where those sit. But it just goes to show, when you look at the likes of the NASDAQ, the S&P, matter of fact, when you look at gold as well, obviously gold's the opposite about what I'm about to say, but investors just don't really feel the urge to be in risk on assets right now because they have no idea how this is going to affect the markets going forward. And so we have seen 14% corrections on the NASDAQ, similar corrections on the S&P, gold making brand new all-time highs almost on a daily basis. I think it's about $3,100 at the moment. And Bitcoin and altcoins have not gotten away with it. I mean, you know, in the last 6 weeks, Bitcoin has gone from 95,000 down to 76, and it's currently sitting about 85 again. That actually, in the grand scheme of things, as would say, we've fared better than the NASDAQ and the S&P in that. And actually, a $20,000 swing or a 20% swing with a 10% recovery, or I suppose it'd be a 50% recovery actually, is pretty par for the course for Bitcoin actually. But when you look at sentiment, when you look at sort of where the ETFs were and institutional investment across Bitcoin from a few weeks ago, there was definitely some nervousness with people wanting to dip their hands in the pockets and actually committing to that. I'm going to go through some of this stuff a little bit later on, so don't necessarily need to go through there. I've just been having a sort of headline, the US tariffs prompts EU retaliation, and just sort of reading through this, that there's not really much there. We basically just have Ursula effectively telling other heads of states in the EU that things are probably going to be quite bad. They should wait to see what it is and then put together a plan and come back. So the reason I'm sort of saying that is April 2nd is when the United States are going to announce theirs. We're probably going to see Thursday and Friday this week other nations from around the world coming up with their own retaliation. And so don't think that whatever the news comes out tomorrow and however the markets react tomorrow, that might be the end of it, because China might drop a bomb, not a literal bomb, a tariff bomb, better change my words there, the day after. The EU might do it the day after that. We just really need to see how the dust settles. What is interesting is, I don't have it up at the moment, but I know that Israel have blinked. They're the first to blink, and they've kind of said, look, we're going to scrap our tariffs at the moment. We want to align ourselves with where the United States are. I don't necessarily want to get down the political reasons of why they may have done that. I think we'll leave that one where it is. But we are starting to see, on the eve of the deadline or the announcement, nations starting to actually think about what they want to do and where they want to go. And again, before we even wake up tomorrow morning, we may see some other big nations also announcing similar sort of step backs. On the other side of that, Mexico have said, look, we'll just wait. We'll see what happens tomorrow, but we will make our announcement on the 3rd. And Mexico, Canada, and China are the big three, really. EU are certainly going to be on the chopping block, but I'm not necessarily saying that they're going to get the same level of tariffs. There's a really detailed article here, which I'll put in Discord. However, there is a paid wall. I'm on a free, because I think you can sign up to Bloomberg for free for like the first 3 months or whatever. But this goes into massive detail about the history of the tariffs, but also sort of where some estimations might be in terms of how this might affect the markets. I'm not going to run through it because it's incredibly detailed and it's quite a long document. And, I don't think we really need to go through it, but I'll post it in Discord. It's worth it. If you can, maybe you can run it through ChatGPT and it'll give you the summary behind the paywall if you don't want to sign up. But I'm pretty certain you can sign up for free for 30 days anyway. Right. We'll leave it at that. There's a couple of other news things I want to talk about at the moment, but I want to kind of get into how this tariff, and it is, that's the point I'm trying to make, I suppose. We're just talking about the tariffs first. This is the big news event, and whether it's buy the rumors, sell the news, we'll wait to see. I mean, price action moving as it has moved today could well be that way, but it doesn't necessarily mean that all things considered are lost for Bitcoin. And I just kind of, what's on the screen at the moment here. This is Glassnode. So this is Bitcoin's price performance over the last 4-year cycles, and taking their price from the low of the cycle to where we currently find ourselves. So not halving, the low of the cycle. So that would be the end of 2018 for the 2021 bull run. It'll be the end of 2022 for this bull run. And it would be, got to do my maths here, probably 2014, 2015 for the 2017 bull run. And it's kind of just had a look at it. And the current cycle is in black. I suppose it doesn't necessarily matter with the other two colors, but for those of you who are interested, the 2015 to 2018 cycle is in blue, and the green one is the last bull cycle, 2018 to 2022. And the reason I bring this up is, despite everything that's gone on, we've kind of tracked very similar over that sort of 2-year period as to where we have in previous bull cycles, whether it be a double top bull cycle like we saw last time, or a single blow off top like we saw the time before. And of course there are variances within this, but generally the lines overlap quite a lot over that period. The one thing that has changed this time is sort of we get to around about beginning of February, funnily enough, when we started talking about tariffs, and this cycle starts to underperform. Doesn't mean that we can't catch up a little bit later on, but there's nothing majorly that's changed except for the amount of zeros behind Bitcoin. In terms of its actual growth, we're tracking very similarly over a similar time frame. Why do I? Oh, sorry. And this next one, this is a horrendous scale on this, because this one is now from halvings. And what you can kind of see at the moment is it makes sense. This is this cycle. The halving, which was in April of last year, so almost a year ago, around about 65,000, we got up to 108,000. But when I bring in some other data, it doesn't adjust the scale, so it looks weird. So we're going to have to use a little bit of imagination within it. But if I do bring in last cycle somehow, here we go, you see, it's gone up to 600,000. We know it's not. So you kind of know last cycle, the peak was at 64,000. So we're not trying to overlay where the prices are. But in terms of time and where we are, we've still got very similar patterns. We had a bit of chop straight after the halving. So this was chopped with just slight downwards, whilst last cycle was just chopped sideways. Then we've had a strong move up, and we did have a strong move up. 54,000 to 109,000 is a strong move, however you're going to slice it. And it's exactly what we've had here. And then we might be slightly early this cycle than we were last cycle, but we've kind of had a little bit of a chop and we've started to fall away, which is exactly what we saw last time. So yes, okay, the price of actual Bitcoin may be different in terms of the scale, but the general timeframes and the sort of the way that the market has moved has actually kind of gone how we've seen it before. That's great. Okay, Bitcoin doing its thing, that's fine. But then we have a look at altcoins, and I can't get a graph like either of those other two. So we're kind of just going to have to go off the information that I've just drawn up on this chart, which hopefully you can see. For no other reason than just to fit it on. These are 2-week timeframes. It does not going to change anything necessarily in what we're going to talk about, but at least you can kind of see it, and I don't think my head's in the way. So good. So the vertical white lines are the halvings. So in 2020, the halving was on the 11th of May. And then I actually think this is wrong. I think it's the 19th, but it's close enough because it's a 2-week candle. It's got it down. It was the 18th, wasn't it? It's got it down as the 8th, but it's just because it's fallen on a 2-week candle. So why have I got these up? Because what we're looking at is total 2. So this is Ethereum and altcoins. And we're just trying to see, where we currently sit, because Bitcoin's kind of followed similar paths. And are we seeing sort of a similar state with altcoins? And so from halving to where we currently find ourselves at the moment, as I said, it's almost a year. So it's about, well, again, it was 350 days. But now that it's a 2 week, it says it's 357. So I suppose this one should actually, I don't think I am going to be able to make it go one more, because it's going to take it to 64. I'm not sure how to do that without it. Yeah, 64. We'll have to just leave it as it is. Gives us a rough figure anyway of where we need to be. So that's the time frame from halving. So what has the altcoin market done since those halvings? Well, back in 2020, where we did have QE, I accept, we actually saw from the price of the altcoin market, which is around about 80 billion at the time of halving, it go all the way up to an unbelievable 1.23 trillion, which is a 1,500% increase over that 1 year period. We actually have a look at how altcoins have performed this time round, and it's a bit, unfortunately, of a different story. So same sort of time frame, granted it's 2 week time candles, so we're out by 7 days, but we're not there. The peak, the highest we managed to get to was only a 54% increase. But shockingly enough, actually, at the halving, it was 1.04 trillion, and we currently find ourselves at 1.01 trillion. So in a bull market, in the parabolic run year, apparently, if we're sticking with the 4 year cycle, altcoins have only managed to, at their peak, get 50% higher. Generally, this is total market, I'm not talking about individual altcoins, 50% higher. But actually, as we find ourselves today, we are 30 billion under where we were a year ago. So altcoins have not had that explosiveness and that sort of pop that we have seen this time round. And look, I fell for it too. You know, I do, and I have had Bitcoin this whole cycle, but I was, heavily invested in altcoins for a vast majority of where we found ourselves. And it's only kind of recently that I have kind of just readjusted where we need to sit with that. And the other thing that we need to consider is how are altcoins doing versus Bitcoin? Because it's one thing to just say, well, alt season's just around the corner, we're going to turn anytime soon, it's Bitcoin dominance. But actually, when we overlay Bitcoin dominance on this, Bitcoin dominance is now in blue, we can see that during the 2020 cycle here, and let me just put a circle around it so we can kind of see what I'm talking about. We had huge swaves of downward momentum of Bitcoin dominance where alts were booming, Bitcoin then taking up, and then that huge waterfall effect that we expect with a genuine alt season. And we really saw altcoins dominate. And we went from, because this is logarithmic, we went from like 500 billion to 1.25 trillion in a space of like 6 weeks. So, massive gains with altcoins there. But when we look at what's happened this side, and let's just get rid of this circle now, Bitcoin hasn't broken yet. Bitcoin continues to climb. We haven't had still similar time frame. Matter of fact, this should have happened weeks ago, but Bitcoin is still making that move. And the point that I'm really trying to make there is altcoins don't yet seem to be the play. I'm sure they will be. And if you look at some individually, there are ways in which you can pick them out. But with 20,000 new altcoins being created each day, it gets harder and harder to find some of those winners. And then we think about, well, let's talk about smart money, because that's what we aim to be. We are retail, but we aim to be smart money. And looking at the ETF inflows or outflows, the ETF flows at least, 3 weeks ago, this was a sea of red. This was, my canary in the coal mine here is about to choke out on some gas. What are we going to do? Because all we saw was BlackRock selling. Well, actually, for the last 2.5 weeks, all they've done is buy. We've only got one red day from BlackRock. And if we go look across at the totals, we've only got 3 red days out of the 15 that are displayed. One of those is about to disappear. So yeah, okay, last 2 days have been red. But I'm only personally interested in what BlackRock are doing anyway. And they're starting to buy up and buying up pretty well. There's been a couple of quiet days, 2 zeros and one that's only at 4 million. But we've had some big ones in there as well. So smart money, they're looking at buying Bitcoin. What smart money is not interested in is Ethereum. And Ethereum is just This only shows the last 15 days, but if you're taking 15 days before this, it was a sea of red as well. And with Ethereum still the largest altcoin out there and sort of the poster boy, if you will, of altcoins, there seems to be no smart money interest in buying Ethereum. And that's a problem because, well, it's a perceived problem, should I say. We don't have any other ETFs for smart money to have a look into yet, so we don't know how they're going to go. So we can only go on what we see. Smart money likes Bitcoin. Smart money doesn't like Ethereum. There's something wrong with Ethereum they don't like, whether that's just because it's not the store of value they see Bitcoin is, whether it's an actual issue with Ethereum itself being slow and expensive, or they just aren't necessarily interested in the altcoin market one way or another. We need a few more alt ETFs to come through, I suppose, to really see where that goes. And then we take it into back into total 2, but this time we're on the weekly time frame, and I've got the 50 EMA. Why the 50 EMA on the weekly? Because we always use that as an indicator for bull or bear markets, don't we? Bull market price action, as we see here, 2016 to peak in beginning of 2018, end of 2017, always above the 50 EMA, strong bounces from it. Then we get into a bear market, it breaks below and it stays below, which is what happens. Then we get into the next bull run, and again, breaks above it, stays above it, looking strong, peaks out in November, gets into the bear market. And then we've got to say to ourselves, well, where do we find ourselves now? And this is the issue. It's total 2. And we're only just below, but we are actually below it. We've been below it now for, the best part of 6 weeks. We had another stint last summer where we were below the 50 EMA. So not all things are lost, but this is unlike where we've seen it before. And it's because the interest really is just sticking with BTC at the moment. ETFs are there. The dominance is still high. And the reality of it is, if you personally are sat at home, you sat on, 10 BTC, and you bought that BTC, sub 30,000, do you really want to be selling that BTC right now to go and move it into Fartcoin or, NEAR or Ondo or whatever? Probably not. It's probably, you just don't feel that that's the right play. BTC, certainly in my opinion, has suddenly become something that is almost too risky to mess around with altcoins. And if I'm thinking like that, how many other people are thinking like that? And then how many people are stopping going into where the altcoins come and see? And this doesn't lie. This is what we use. It's what a lot of people use, bull and bear market for cryptocurrency. 50 EMA on the weekly time frame. We are below it. We're supposed to be in a bull market. It's not supposed to be anywhere near this 50 EMA. And yet we find ourselves within it. Now, going back to Adam's point about is it Ethereum's terrible performance? Well, funny you should say that, because actually, when you do total 3, sorry, I just need a drink. When you do total 3, you take out Ethereum, actually, it doesn't look that bad. Yes, okay, it's not the best place necessarily to be, but we're still in a bull market, and Bitcoin looks a little bit like this one, actually. Resting on the 50 EMA, that's a good time potentially to buy. So it likely is Ethereum's absolute dire performance over the last 2 years, and it is. We're going to have a look at it in a little bit in more detail. It's not been great. It's not done what it did last cycle or even the cycle before that, and I'm sure there's plenty of reasons we could go into why. But the total 3, taking out Ethereum, actually kind of looks healthy-ish in the sense of, ignore the yellow line, 50 EMA, all we've done at the moment is we've hit it, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 candles in a row. Matter of fact, 7 of the last 9 candles, we've hit it, but we've managed to stay above the 50 EMA. That's fairly strong, showing the 50 EMA is strong. And actually, you're almost thinking, are we on for a mini alt season? And I can't, this chart does, for me, I'm not going to be like, oh no, absolutely blind. We're nowhere near. This would, for me, be one of the better indicators that maybe there is a mini alt season around, because after we do spend some time on this, and there's no guarantee how much time there is, but when we do, we normally break strong away from it. And sadly, on this occasion, we did break strong, the Trump pump after the election. And then unfortunately, we've just folded away. But we've come back to where it is. And altcoins as a whole are above where they were before the election results at the beginning of November. So fairly good. And then similarly, looking at this line, going all the way back to 2017, with the exception of March 2020, where we broke below it, every time we've hit this line, and we have hit it, we've just had strong bounces. And so we're pretty close to hitting it at the moment. Maybe there's another month of just sideways action before we do, because remember, these are weekly candles, or we have to accept that we do slightly break below, and that gives us the impetus to go up. But as it currently sits at the moment, this line would be around about 700 billion. We got down to 720 not that long ago. So yeah, there is potential that we could see some movement for altcoins. But just going back to that, smart money. This news article here, there's loads of news articles. Don't worry, I'm not going to read them. I've just done it to illustrate a point. But actually, 1 in 4 S&P 500 firms will hold Bitcoin by 2030. One random crypto advisor suggests, just looking at the trend and how quickly companies are looking to try and adopt this, and how much is effectively being rammed down their throats. Eric Trump was talking about it only 5 minutes ago. Again, but there definitely does seem to be a flavor. Notice how the title doesn't say and altcoins; it just says Bitcoin, store of value. They've seen the potential for that, and we've started to see Metaplanet. They're doing the Michael Saylor infinite money glitch. So they're doing stock splits to buy more Bitcoin. GameStop are buying more Bitcoin. This is all within the last week. Mara are buying more Bitcoin. Tether have bought more Bitcoin. Obviously, Strategy have bought more Bitcoin. So, excuse me, in the last 7 days, big companies, yes, most of them are all significantly related to Bitcoin anyway. I'm not trying to shy away from that. People are still buying Bitcoin. They're not buying altcoins. They're not going, we'll load up on Ethereum as well, just in case by the time we get to 2040, that's going to be mooning. They're not interested right now. And then you can have a look at this. And this is publicly owned companies. This is, I think it's from a couple of weeks ago. So it might be, 1st of April. So today. And this top 91 countries and just all of their breakdown. Now, the vast majority of these 91 companies are in the crypto industry, but still it's Bitcoin holdings quite significant. What is kind of amusing though, is when you get down to, 90, 85 to 90, I bet there are people in RT that own more Bitcoin than some of these. And these are the largest companies that own Bitcoin, which is quite amazing. And then we've got the countries who own Bitcoin. And this is just what people are necessarily interested in. What's also interesting, I think it's kind of been slipped under the radar, is if you remember back on beginning of March, when the strategic Bitcoin reserve, whatever that actually turned out to be, was announced, one of the things they were going to do was do an audit, and every governmental department that has any exposure to cryptocurrency actually had to tally it up so they could see how much they had, and they gave themselves 30 days. So on this Saturday, we are expecting the United States to at least have the results, whether or not they announce them, of actually how much cryptocurrency they own. Now, we know they're not going to sell the Bitcoin, sound like my dad there, but they can sell other altcoins to, however they see fit. And again, they may not do that straight away. But, it'll be interesting to see whether that estimated 207,000 is actually true, whether it's more, whether it's less. We'll find out, hopefully, in about a week's time. I'll take it off this one. Let's just put a chart up whilst I have a bit of a chat about things. I suppose, we can do it here whilst we're talking about them. And let's just have a look at let's go on the daily. I've talked about this before, and we're just going to do rough figures. We're just going to eyeball it. Trump pump. Election down here, 67,000, currently at 85. So, we're 20%, 25% up from where we were before the Trump pump. That's Bitcoin. Let's just go down my watch list. Okay, so Tau's next. So Tau at the election was 420. It's lost 50% of its value since the election. Ethereum at the election It's 2,400. So sorry, my series just activated. So it's 2,500, 2,400. We're now sub 2,000. So it's lost 25%. Near was 3.7. We're now 2.6. It's lost basically 30% of its value. Link is one of the few that has actually done okay. So that was at 10. It's now still at 14, but still lost some. Ondo, I think that's also 63, down 81. Dot, pretty much par for the course where it was. So it's just round tripped it. Casper, down massively. You're getting the point here though. Render, down massively. Solana, you know, I mean, it got all the way up to 300 and now it's down to 126. It was at 150. Virtue, I think, has done all right. And then, funnily enough, XRP absolutely bucking the trend. This was down at 50 cents in the election. Still managed to hold it above $2. So well done to the XRP army. You kind of get the point now. Altcoins have just not done well. Much like the rest of the traditional markets, with the NASDAQ. Sorry, this is the S&P. Trump pump was at 5,700. We're now down at 56.17, so it's below. NASDAQ was at basically 20,000. We're now at 19,300, so it's below. You kind of just see the resemblance there. And yes, Bitcoin is down, but it still managed to give its head above the Trump pump, whereas altcoins just haven't. And I just fear that any negative news that is going to come out tomorrow, or if it is negative news tomorrow, the reaction from that, you know, altcoins is not the place to be. Bitcoin will be hit. NASDAQ, S&P will be hit. Looks like altcoins will get hit even harder. And there might be the odd one that bucks the trend, but the vast majority will not. Whether you want to look at total 2, total 3, others, anything outside of the top 10, or just cherry picking stuff from the right-hand side of my screen. You know, there's only a handful that made it out there. And so, you know, with that in mind, I still have alts. I just have reduced my position in alts. I bought more Bitcoin and I am sat in stables. And it just feels like that is the better play. And if, I didn't mention the poll, but if, as I've mentioned in the poll, it's already priced in and the markets don't react, or the market just continues to rally anyway, if I was to buy Tau, it's still less than what I sold it for. And even if it wasn't, it'd be better just to get in knowing that actually we're on the way back up rather than just buying and letting it drop. So I'm not saying that it's over for altcoins, but for me, it's just more about having Bitcoin is, one, a safer play, and two, actually, if I ever wanted to sell that Bitcoin straight into whatever altcoin I want to go into, the value I'm going to get is far better. And I don't have many BTC pairs, I don't think. BTC pairs, let's have a look. Why didn't that open up? What rubbish ones, but let's just put it on the weekly. You know, DOT, lowest it's ever been. Ethereum, incredibly low, down to 2020 levels. Fetch, I had that on there. Flux, I'm not sure why I had a lot of these GFAL, Glimmer, HBAR. I mean, HBAR's actually made a move up. Casper, not the lowest it's ever been because there's been a spike down, a bit lower. PIF, near. You get the point again. There's a lot of altcoins that are doing incredibly badly against the BTC counterpart. So whilst, yes, I bought BTC a while ago and I've always bought it, I bought some quite recently, but it's managed to hold its head higher than altcoins have. So I could just sell that and get more of whatever it is I want to. You know, that's kind of trading that we talk about. I don't think we always do that often, but there's definitely a possibility there. But I wouldn't be doing anything with that unless we start to see Bitcoin dominance break. And for me, you know, realistically, that break probably needs to be below the 50 EMA, and it has to stay below it because the clouds held it. The only time it's been down to 50 EMA on the weekly here in the past 2 years, it's bounced pretty strongly from it. Maybe I wouldn't use that. Maybe it'd be the daily. But even that, you know, similar kind of levels. Whether or not we wait till it got down to 55, I think it's too much, but probably that sub 60, taking out these vector candles and staying below it would be what I'd want to have a look at. So definitely just some consideration there. And bullish on Bitcoin. I'm still bullish on Bitcoin, and we're going to talk about Bitcoin's price action in a moment. Altcoins, they are the gamble that we always thought they were, and just is right now the right time for it. For me, it's not what I'm in with, I'm comfortable with, and the rest I've got on the side, maybe I get an opportunity to have a look at some lower levels a little bit later on. Anyway, going into some of the other questions, sorry, Adam just put, on that point, others is also above too. There you go. You're talking about others being above the 50 EMA on the weekly. So yeah, there we go. So Ethereum is dragging it down, and of course it is, because it was a 400 billion market cap. What is it? 230 billion market cap. So it's pretty big. Okay. Chris asked these questions last week. You must have either asked them whilst I was on the call or afterwards. But sorry, I didn't answer them. First one he did is doing a video tutorial about staking the Root network via the Nova wallet. So I set out to do this today, but I actually couldn't, because all of mine's on KuCoin and the BitTensor network was suspended. So I couldn't actually do the video for you. But what I did have is I had a little bit of, loose shrapnel on my Nova wallet. And I know Simon's done a video about going to Tau Stats and sort of doing it delegating it that way to the Root network. I actually did it the old fashioned way, the way we did it when it was the old system pre-subnets. So I just went into Nova, I then went to have a look at the app, scrolled down to Tensor wallet, went in there, hit the little stake icon, and instead of it, you then just choosing which validator to stake it with, it then gives you the option of which subnet. So I just put the subnet 0, and then I just chose tau.com, and off we went. So it was the exact same way that you have done for the year prior to subnets coming around, and I just did it that way. And granted, it was a small amount, but it seemed to work without a problem. I then thought, I'll film it and I'll move some across, but unfortunately, the network's suspended. I'll try and do it. I don't know if it's less complicated than the other video, but it seems that way worked fine. So that's the way I know. That's the way I'm going to stick with. Couple of thoughts on when I think Bitcoin will peak this cycle. Why do I laugh? Because I don't like answering this question because I have absolutely no idea. But let's give it a go. No, at the last cuddle, I went through about 30 indicators, on-chain and others, to signify where we thought the Bitcoin top might come in and which ones had worked well in the past. Now, not all of them give a dollar value reading of where that can be, but some of them do. And that kind of gave a range of where we thought they could be. And so maybe that's a good example. I do not think Larry thinks 750,000 is going to be correct. I don't think Arthur Hayes' 400,000 is unfortunately going to be correct this cycle. I have it in and around this area here, which is about 140,000 to 250,000. I mean, probably the lower end of that, if I'm being honest. But that's kind of where I see it. Now, funnily enough, we'll get onto that chart in a moment. But for those of you that have watched me do this enough times, I have that chart on the 12-hour, which has the fibs that go from the March all-time high to the August low. And if we just run that same fib again, and we bring it out to this box, actually, some fib levels line up with this almost perfectly. So we know this one works well. We use it on this chart all the time. I like it. Whether or not you guys do doesn't necessarily matter, but I do. So level 2 kind of signified where the last top was. And then we can see 618s. I like 618 levels. A 2 618 is 140. The 3 round number is 163. I think we're probably going to be in and around that area. Then the 618 and the 4 are at the upper echelons of that. And I haven't retrofitted this box just to meet these fib levels. You can go back to the recording from the cuddle. The vast majority of the on-chain indicators do indicate roughly 140 to 250. And so those kind of just seem to align. Now, that's still a big move. We're still talking about, I have to get my maths out here, a $4.5 trillion market cap for Bitcoin to get to the upper echelons of this area, or around about a $3 trillion market cap to kind of get to the bottom area. So, that's an awful lot of money that needs to come into the market, and that doesn't take into account what would also then flow into the crypto altcoins. So I put this in Discord today. There's a lot of external factors I think need to happen to do that. We've talked about these on the calls before. We need to resolve the tariff war, first and foremost, whatever that's going to be. We need interest rates to come down. We need QE to start and to actually be effective once it has started, and not just in the United States, but globally. Although the United States, I think, will, give the confidence to the crypto market. And let's face it, the crypto market is just, it's a nervous wreck. It just relies on good or bad news, not really the data that follows. So something like the United States going into QE, I think would tip us over the edge. The likes of China, as good as that will be from a global point of view, I just don't see it having the impact at the moment, not unless China change their stance on cryptocurrencies and mining, etc., and all that stuff. Anyway, we'll leave that there. So that's what that is. And then final thoughts on Tesla. We'll have a look at that a little bit later on for you. And then Julia's asked about thoughts on an article and the implications on Bitcoin price. So the article itself is a policy proposal for the Treasury to effectively issue $2 trillion worth of Bitcoin-enhanced bonds to offset the debt as one of its strategic reserve proposals. Now, what does this actually mean? Well, this bit bonds, or whatever you want to call it, Bitcoin bonds, what they would effectively look to do, if I'm reading this correctly, because this is the only article I've seen on it, I've not seen any actual announcement from them, would be, I'll just find it here, is that each bond would allocate 90% of every dollar would go towards a conventional government financing, it says here, and then 10% would be used for BTC acquisition, which then would, effectively enable the government to meet its mandate of increasing its Bitcoin reserve without causing any additional pressure on the taxpayer. Now, do I think it's realistic? I mean, they're going to look at every option here. If some of the incentives are proposed as to what are proposed here, I'm not sure whether or not it would. So, as an example, it's saying here that it would offer a 1% annual interest rate, which is massively lower than current 10-year bond interest rates, which it says here is at 4.5. And when you think about it says, in exchange for accepting the low rates, you get some exposure to Bitcoin linked upside, which sounds great, but we normally get 2 years of upside, 2 years of downside. So does that 1% really give you the swings that you need to offset 2 years of down? Perhaps not. The payout would include a full principal repayment, you'd think so, fixed interest, and a performance-based Bitcoin link component. So investors would receive 100% of the BTC's gains up to a compounded annual return threshold. Or what is that annual return threshold? You might as well just buy Bitcoin. This is the whole MicroStrategy proposal as well. You might as well just buy Bitcoin and have your exposure to this. So look, if it goes ahead and there is interest within it, then great. That's $200 billion worth of Bitcoin that would be bought by the United States, who would then have no interest in selling. That thing is getting locked away. That's great. That's great for price stability, and when we get to darker days and the market's crashing again. In terms of how that is going to help offset some of the debt, we just got to see how they would then ultimately utilize that. And I think they're talking about $14 trillion worth of debt, so it's only 1/7 if it was fully applied. Look, I think we're going to see a lot of ideas similar to this, because the strategic committee for crypto reserves has to come up with proposals like this, because they're not allowed to buy it with taxpayers' money. So we're going to see some. Yes, I think it would be a net positive for cryptocurrency, but will they have the interest to fill the full 2 trillion? I think the returns could probably need to be better than that, but that's just my opinion on it. That was it from the questions. There's nothing in there. So let's actually get into Bitcoin and some TA, shall we? We're already 50 minutes in, so apologies for boring you for this long, but we're finally getting into some price action. So here we currently are. Fib levels are on there, and yellow boxes, as you all know by now, represent the liquidation heat maps. Now, interestingly, down here, we got the grayed out one, which we drew last week. And then what happened? Price went and immediately, we talked about this was the one that was going to be attacked because it was right on the fib level as well. That's exactly what happened. They've came in, they've totally cleared it out. Price is held on the 272 fib level pretty well, 12-hour candle, and then it's bounced away. And funnily enough, as soon as the market dropped, what did we do? We're going to go short, guys. The market's falling. So all of these short sellers went in with 50x leverage or whatever it was, in around 84,000 to 86,000, because hell, we're going to hit 76 again. It's a guarantee. And so what did the market do? Today, it's absolutely flown into it. We only got to about 85,000, 85,500. But, in theory now, this is here because we've eaten it. We've eaten that away. Let's get rid of that for a second, because of this candle, because it's just easy pickings for market makers. And so that's what they've gone and done. And I imagine that, when people went short, they were thinking about the tariffs coming out this week as well. And it was just a surefire thing. And that's how the market makers play here. But we are still ultimately sandwiched between 87,000 and 82,000. For me, I could see, let's forget tariffs tomorrow, because God knows what might happen there. But if we just had the natural movement of this, I could see ourselves working our way back up to that 87,000 level, which we talked about at the beginning. If we don't break above that 87,000 level we talked about, it's a fib level, which we have failed to climb above before. And we might just find ourselves yo-yoing between the two of these, which is why 87,000 is a really important level at the moment. And that 87.5 is really what we want. Close above it, build above it, able to start moving back up. And we start to break that. Yes, there's another level at 89, but realistically, we'd be looking at this kind of area of liquidation heat map, to target. And then dare we ever even dream about getting back to 94,000. But the real one, we've got to beat 87 before we can get to that. 87, 88,000, we start talking about higher highs again, with the higher lows, and we maybe we reverse the trend. But unfortunately, I think, really we kind of need to take out the 90, maybe even the 94 before we can have that serious conversation about where that is and why that is potentially going that way. Something else I wanted to do on here, and I can't think what it was. Not sure. That was it. Let's go to those. I mean, I've zoomed out. This is the daily, but I've zoomed out deliberately, kind of squeezed things across it, because it has been tough. Like, the crypto market since Donald Trump took office has been a roller coaster. And it, really has played on the emotions. Even the most stalwart crypto investor has found, it hard to justify certain positions that we're in. And I've found it particularly painful myself. I'm not going to shy away from that. But actually, when you kind of look at it like this, maybe you have to squint your eyes a little bit here. But, we are, I think, the angle's not correct. Of course it's not. It doesn't rhyme. I'm not necessarily trying to do that. But, we had a period of consolidation last year, which lasted 9 months, which was joyous when we were at the top of it and absolutely hellish when we were down at the bottom. And it's kind of the same. The angle's slightly steeper, I get it, but there is, a downwards bit of just consolidation where it's fantastic when we were above 100K, hell, even when we were above 90K, but we lose that 90K level and it's the end of the world, and the market sentiment is utterly in the toilet. But, the reality of what we have experienced last year compared to what we experienced this year is, last year, high to low was 33% roughly. Thus far, I don't think I've used that term in a while. So far this year, we're only at 29.5%. So we actually haven't felt the pain that we felt last year, and we were fine with it last year. There was no talk of the bull market being over. There was no worry about it. It was just part and parcel of where it is. But for some reason, now that we're in this bull year, we actually kind of lose sight on, and actually this is still a correction. I feel like sometimes we have to remind ourselves of that. I know we talk about it almost every week. We certainly talk about it on Thursdays as well. But this is a correction that we we have lived through before. Granted, if you're in BTC, we know we've talked about where altcoins have been there. So there's no time frame for how long this can necessarily take, and there's no guarantee that we won't see it to go lower. I mean, hell, if we were to put this at the top, see where it goes, this lines up perfectly at 33% with the all-time high from last year, 74,000. And unfortunately, I think 73,800. We may unfortunately get there. We look at it on now. Let's go. Yeah, weekly's probably okay. The weekly time frame. It looks worse now because we had some really big drops there, which we were broken up slightly on this one. But that move back down to there, it could still happen, and we could still get to it. It is just something we've got to just be with, and you've also got to make peace with how your current portfolio is made up. If you're happy to ride out the altcoin lows should we drop down that far, then fine. Just know not to open up your Delta app and see what your portfolio actually looks like. I haven't. But if you don't like it and you want it in a safer one, then just think about rotations. Just think about it's not throwing in the towel. You're just trying to just find a life raft, if you will, while the rains come in. And for me at the moment, that's Bitcoin. I can't guarantee that we're not going to go down. I do like the fact that we've been able to hold that 80k on the weekly. Tomorrow could be anything though. So how long we hold it for, I suppose, I don't necessarily know. But I stand by the fact that sentiment is still in the toilet. We're at 34 in a bull run. We have been down this lower level for a while now. And we talked about, you can't really chart it, but it is higher highs and higher lows. Well, I suppose that was a lower high, actually. But we look back on these periods of actually, when it's down here, this is generally a good time to buy. What is ironic is when we were down at 10 wasn't the lowest that we were at, so you can never quite hit the bottom. And if you wait for fear and greed at 10 on the 27th of Feb, I have to put it on the daily now. 27th of Feb was 84,000, where we currently are at the moment, but it was a fear and greed at 10. When we were getting into the 20s is when we were down at, the 11th of March. What were we then? Yeah, we were at 20 on the 10th of March. 11th of March, we were at 24. But that was actually the lowest of it. So, there's no correlation necessarily with it, but generally when they're down as low as this, it's a good time to buy if you have the ability to sort of sit it out till the markets recover. And then talking about alt season, we're not in alt season. It's 22 on the Bitcoin index. It is 15 on the CoinMarketCap index. This isn't necessarily a time, for me at least, if you are in Bitcoin or in stables, to be thinking, I'm going to load up on altcoins. Or if you do it with some risk. You don't go 100% in. You kind of think about laddering in on the way down. If you miss some, you miss some. It's all about risk management. Bitcoin dominance, I think we've talked about. So let's have a look at some of the other ones. Sorry, let's have a look at Bitcoin on some lower time frames. We're not really done that yet. So, as exciting as today's move's been, we're back on the daily time frame at the moment. What have we actually run into? We've run into the 200 EMA perfectly here, and we've rejected from it. Okay, and that's a problem because that 200 EMA has held us back. And yeah, okay, we make a break for it, but for the last 3 months, we've not broken above the 50 EMA at 87,000, that magical level we talked about again. So, we may see a little bit of a run. We may get another 2-3% growth over the next few days, if the Trump news comes out all right. But this is something that we've got to break. And it's proven hard to do it. So I can't really get too excited about any reversal recovery for me until not only do we break it with volume, we break it with strength, and we stay above it. And that could take weeks to manifest itself. Lower time frames, 4 hour. I actually kind of like how the 4 hour has been set up down here. Once it loads, it's taking its time. 50 EMA is not loading. I've got an error for some reason. Indication error. Okay. Let's just see if that changes it. Yeah. Okay. There we go. Just quick reset. So on the 4 hour for Bitcoin, bit of a double bottom down here, and then we've had that strength, and we've broken. Look, we broke through the 50 EMA. It's only on the 4 hour, but we broke through the 50 EMA with strength. We've managed to stay above it. Now there are vector candles on the way back down, and maybe a retest of the 50 EMA is on the cards. But I just like the strength of how we've got through there. We've still got to get above. So this dotted line here is the 50 EMA on the daily, but now we're on the 4 hour. So we're kind of running up and against it as well. So we've got to break through that. But it's setting up at the moment quite nicely. And even yesterday's move with strong move up, strong move back down, consolidating, and then we found the power to get back up. So I'm happy with how that one's going. I don't think the hourly really tells any different story. We'll just be above the 50 EMA here. Yeah, nicely cleaned it. We're moving away, and you can, look, you can see the nice moves here. Break away through it, back down, consolidate in the 50 EMA, break up through it, making a new higher high, back down to the 50 EMA to consolidate. We're breaking up through it. We're just consolidating at the moment. Maybe we pull back. We'll have to wait and see. And then I expect another move up, and we've actually got vector candles, in and around up here at 86,000. Maybe even challenging this one right at the top at the 87. We'll have to wait and see, but there's definitely some room to do it. And the fact that we're taking chunks out of it, cooling off, and then going again is great to see. But 3 p.m. tomorrow, who knows? Right, Tau daily. Let's have a look. Last week we talked about, when will we have? We will have a retest of the 50 EMA. When will we have it? Unfortunately, we've got to get past the 10 and the 20. We had a nice move up back end of last week, but what did we run into? The 20 EMA, and we battered down quite hard. We're below it. We haven't really seen prior to the weekend many closes down at this level since last summer. But unfortunately, we are continuing to see those closes here. Still got 4 hours left on this candle. Nothing really to see except for, everything's still fanned out quite nicely. All the EMAs are tracking down. And yeah, that's unfortunately where we find ourselves. I'm trying to see if there's any, there's no real point in drawing the fib because we're kind of back down at that level. You can see moved up nicely, 618 came back down, and we're just on it. We lose this level, and this is where it's on the daily. We'll have a look on the lower time frames, but the reality of it is, if we lose this level, you maybe have a saving grace here at 215, maybe where the wicks are and the bodies closed last summer. But otherwise, that's surely where you got to be looking. 160. That's not nice to say, bearing in mind in December we were at 700, but that's kind of where it is. And so I don't have an incentive at the moment to buy because we're so close to potentially either having to react off that level or to break down through it. And that's why I'm holding off buying any more till I know what it's done. And yeah, I get it. You can buy, you can stake, you can ride it out, and that's fine. And altcoin alt season happens. We're back up at 700, buying at 220. Great move. But if it doesn't go that way, and we even lose 160, I won't even bother saying the numbers, but it's a strong move up in October 2023. So not much to hold you there. Anyway, enough fear mongering. Let's get rid of those, and let's see if there's anything on the lower time frames. And I've not looked at this on the lowers that can actually give us some hope, because even on the daily, there's still the potential of that. Of course there is. And that's why you don't, for me, I'm not selling and I'm not buying, because we're right on a level in which you can do something. Just miss the beginning of the move, wait for confirmation. What I'd really, get a confirmation we break through this, maybe they get rides up to there, maybe that's an ideal time to take a sidestep from a rejection from that one. But we've got to just wait. Going on the lowers, let's get rid of that. We drew this maybe last week or the week before. I can't remember if I did it from this one. See, something like that. Might not have gone to that wick. I can't remember if it was on the 4 hour or the 1 hour. So we thought it might get a little bit further out, but it has broken. It's retested it. You know, that rising compression has now played out. But for me, on the lower time frame, that double bottom doesn't look as good. That's not fair, actually. It looks fine. I'll change that. But I want to see it above 240. I was going to say it doesn't look great because I was just looking at this bit here. But actually, you've got to remember we're on the lower time frames. So there's still that left side. We've still got that nice touch point there. We are moving up, which is fine. I just want to see how we react at that level. Whatever that is, 240, let's just call it. Get through that 50 EMA on the 4 hour. I mean, it doesn't mean the double bottom has played out. It just means that's one of the points that we have to get through and get past. And I bet you, you just knew it was going to be on a fib level. You just knew it. It's on the 382, 238. There you go. That's the level we've got to get through. And then we'll talk about other levels. But really, after that, it's 280. Once you get through 280, then we can start saying that was a double bottom. 220 was a great buy. Harry, you're an idiot. And we're moving on up. You can call me an idiot beforehand, by all means. Ethereum. I don't know many of us that are in Ethereum, to be fair, but this is just daily chart. Look at it. It's a much steeper drop. Yes, there's that double bottom that we saw on Tau as well. It is actually retesting the 10 EMA on the daily. But it just hasn't looked healthy. We've got, unlike with Tau on the daily, we don't have the 800 EMA because we haven't had enough days yet. But this is the 800 EMA, this one here. And the 200 is about to cross through it. I'm not saying that's a death cross or anything, but we just get the perfect alignment then of the EMAs, don't we, in strength order from top to bottom, which is not where you want it to be. You want it to be the other way around because the market's climbing up. So just not looking great. I'm not going to go down into too much time scales on this one. Ultimately, it's just moving down. I think we talked Ethereum to death. Casper, so I'll get rid of that. So again, I really don't like the Casper one because it's such a beautiful turnaround there. That being said, what I do like about it is that this W formation has that high. I much prefer the W's to have a higher right-hand side than the left-hand side. That is a cleaner show that actually, they bought back up and they've come in and bought that. So there's hope there, but again, gonna have to get to over 8 cents for us to break through and believe that we've actually made that there. But in talking about familiar patterns, large breakdown up to the 20, curl, large breakdown up to the 20. It just feels like it's kind of repeating at the moment. And if the markets don't go the right way, I can potentially see that going back down there. And then, where do we end up going? Because, we're 5 cents, November 2023 kind of level, which is worrying to think that we were at 20 cents not that long ago. Actually, it was 6-7 months ago. But, and there was a couple of ones I wanted to talk about, which was Trump and Melania. And I joke, but wouldn't it be horrendous if 2 years from now we look back and we realize the most obvious thing staring us in the face is that the launch of Trump was the top of the market? I mean, this token got to $80 billion market cap. It's still a $10 billion market cap, having lost $70 worth of value over the course of 3 months. But why do I mention it? Because it has been good to short, and people have shorted it quite well. And actually, this month we get our first unlock. So the original investors that got this token for free, and it's now worth 10 billion, 40 million of those tokens get unlocked this month. Now, every man and his dog know that unlock's happening, so we might actually see a green candle slightly. But you can be sure And those 40 million are going to get sold at some stage. It might not be sold in one go at market, but they're going to be cashing in from 0 to, to 10 billion. They're going to want to see some of that. Now it's 40 million tokens, which is 4% of the overall supply, but it's actually 20% of the circulating supply, because the circulating supply at the moment is only 20 million. So it's only 200 million. So we're putting another 20%, 40%, I can't even do the maths, 20% of the circulating supply out in one go. And then it just unlocks from there. So just be, potential 2 weeks time. There might be a short on the cards. Every man and his dog's going to be talking about this by then. So just bear that in mind with where it's going. But yeah. And Melania, that already has been unlocking. That unlocked from 30 days in. So it's had a much bigger unlock from there. This one, it's giving it a go. Now, annoyingly, I got stopped out 2 weeks ago because of this random move up to 81. And so I just haven't got back in on this one. And, my original take profit was at 56. We're almost actually at that level. But I just haven't got back in. So, there's always funny business, and you just got to be careful. The funding rate of this was ridiculous. It was like 2% every 8 hours, which is kind of unheard of. So it was costing a lot to keep this trade open for more than one day. So just bear that one in mind if you are looking to trade it. Anything else? Tesla. Someone asked me about Tesla. I mean, this looks pretty messy at the moment, but it's done well. You think about, obviously, it hasn't done well. Obviously, it's fallen from $500 down to $200. Recently, obviously, we had all the troubles with people setting Tesla on fire in protest in and around here. Stock price came absolutely down to the toilet at 220. But then actually we've seen over the last couple of weeks a bit of a resurgence from that. And today it had a fairly good move. I think at one stage it was about 6%. I think there was some announcement relating to its autopilot that came out, which I'm sure got people necessarily excited. Am I necessarily excited about this price action? No, not really, if I'm honest, because we've come down to sort of lows in and around down here. And all that's happened is we've come back up, got to the EMA cloud, but also the 200 daily, and then it's a stonking high test candle, and we've started to see it has come back up, but we haven't closed today. We don't know where it's going to go. And tariffs, talking about tariffs in automotive, so I know Tesla generally made in America, so we shouldn't see the tariffs necessarily on that one, but I'm sure it'll have a knock-on effect with exports. And I don't really know off the top of my head how big their export market is. I know Canada withholding money from Tesla, and Japan's banned them from doing some car show or something like that. So, there's already some implications from that. But just from a TA point of view, I don't own any Tesla, and I don't really plan to own any Tesla. Strong move over the last couple of days, bounced off the 800 EMA, but we're still riding in between this. It has been a large fall away. This is reflected very much of the rest of the traditional markets, particularly with the bigger stocks, shall we say. And it's just a reflection that there's risk off. People are just not necessarily interested in riding with this level of risk right now. So actually, if you've got the courage and a long-term outset, I'm sure buying in and around there is probably a fairly decent price, because, maybe we see these lows at 220, which is, I don't know, a 20% drop from where we are. But hell, just remember, there is some sucker that bought it at 500. Hopefully that's not you, Chris. Anyway, I've realized it's 9:15 already, so I have been rambling on far too long from that. There's no other... sorry, Mark's put a couple. Would you not put a Tau buy order in at 170 to catch a potential spike down? No. I'll just wait and evaluate, because who knows what's going to happen, how it's going to get there, how the rest of the market's going to react. So I'm going to wait. You know what? I almost bought some Tau 270, and I broke some rules thinking about, just buy some, doesn't matter. It's less than what it was when I sold it. So, it's all in. But I was like, no, it's just doesn't necessarily feel right. There was, some TA suggesting it's not going to do it. And so I cancelled the order. It didn't hit. It's got down to 220. And today I kind of felt the same. And I thought, sod it. I'll just buy some 225. It's a good price. I bought far higher previously. Let's just do it. And I just remind myself that that's not the way we should be doing it. It's just buying on a whim because, you can. I do that with Bitcoin because I don't plan on selling it. But with this, no, I'm not going to. So I get your point about having one down there. I'm personally just going to wait and see, and we'll make a judgment from there. And then Elon said tariffs will hurt them on parts used to build Teslas. Well, there we go. So it's probably going to have a knock-on effect. Bear in mind also, we are in Q2 now. We're going to start to see some earnings reports coming out. So it'll be interesting to see how these tariffs are going to be forecast. I just had a thought on that one. So yeah. Anyway, I'm going to knock it on the head there. Rambling on for far too long. Trading pub as usual on Thursday. Actually, it might not be. I stand corrected. I know Simon's moving and going on holiday. So he did promise that he would do one, even if it was on his mobile in the removals van. So let me get back to you on that one. Always, I'm around Discord and DMs and that if you want to get in touch that way. Other than that, enjoy the rest of your evening as best you can. I'll be glued to the screens tomorrow to find out if and what happens. And don't just wait for 3 o'clock. We might get announcements beforehand. So if you start seeing price move, I just quickly try and check the news, see if anything's come out about the tariffs and where it's going. But just remember, US speaks tomorrow. The rest of the world may not speak until Thursday or Friday. And there's two sides to this. So let's just wait and see. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Have a good night. And I'll speak to you all soon. Cheers now.